Perfume, the story of a murderer. A GCSE English language practice paper. Grenouille, which means frog, is a Frenchman with no personal odour who was born into poverty and wants to train as a perfumier. His ultimate aim is to capture the scent of those who are loved. It is the story of a murderer. He enters the perfume town of Grasse. He closed his eyes and concentrated on the odours that came floating to him from the building across the way. There were the odours of the kegs, vinegar, and wine, then the hundredfold heavy odours of the warehouse, then the odours of wealth that the walls exuded like a fine golden sweat, and finally the odours of a garden that had to lie on the far side of the building. It was not easy to catch the delicate scents of the garden, for they came only in thin ribbons from over the house's gables down into the street. Grenouille discerned magnolia, hyacinth, daphne, and rhododendron, but there seemed to be something else besides, something in the garden that gave off a fatally wonderful scent, a scent so exquisite that in all his life his nose had never before encountered one like it, or indeed only once before. He had to get closer to that scent. He considered whether he ought simply to force his way through the gate and onto the premises. But meanwhile, so many people had become involved in unloading and inventorying the kegs that he was sure to be noticed. He decided to walk back down the street and find an alley or passageway that would perhaps lead him along the far side of the house. Within a few yards, he had reached the city gate at the start of the Rue Droite. He walked through it, took a sharp left, and followed the town wall down the mountain. He'd not gone far before he smelled the garden, faintly at first, blended with the air from the fields, but then ever more strongly. Finally, he knew that he was very close. The garden bordered on the town wall. It was directly beside him. If he moved back a bit, he could see the top branches of the orange trees just over the wall. Again he closed his eyes. The scents of the garden descended upon him, their contours as precise and clear as the coloured bands of a rainbow. And that one, that precious one, the one that mattered above all else, was among them. Grenouille turned hot with rapture and cold with fear. Blood rushed to his head as if he were a little boy caught red-handed, and then it retreated to his solar plexus, and then rushed up again and retreated again, and he could do nothing to stop it. This attack of scent had come on too suddenly. For a moment, for a breath, for an eternity, it seemed to him time was doubled or had disappeared completely, for he no longer knew whether now was now and here was here, or whether now was not in fact then and here there. That is, the Rue de Marais in Paris, September 1753. The scent floating out of the garden was the scent of the red-headed girl he had murdered that night. To have found that scent in this world again brought tears of bliss to his eyes, and to know that it could not possibly be true frightened him to death. He was dizzy. He tottered a little and had to support himself against the wall, sinking slowly down against it in a crouch. Collecting himself and gaining control of his senses, he began to inhale that fatal scent in short, less dangerous breaths. And he established that, while the scent from behind the wall bore an extreme resemblance to the scent of the red-headed girl, it was not completely the same. To be sure, it also came from a red-headed girl. There was no doubt of that. Notes: rapture means intense pleasure. Inventorying means counting. And solar plexus is the breastbone between your ribs. Questions. 1. Read again the first part of the source from lines 1 to 17. Answer all parts of this question. Tick one box for each question. 1.1. Which scents can Grenouille smell? The house, vinegar, sweat. 1.2. The odours from the garden were overpowering, powerful, hard to detect. 1.3. Grenouille wanted to capture the scent, get nearer the scent, mark the place with a ribbon. 1.4. There was another scent in the garden that was glorious, enlivening, repellent. 4 marks. Question 2. Look in detail at lines 35 to 44. How does the writer use language here to describe what Grenouille senses? You can include the writer's choice of words and phrases, language features and techniques, and sentence forms. 8 marks. Question 3. You now need to think about the structure of the source as a whole. The text is from the middle of a novel. How has the writer structured the text to create suspense? You could write about how suspense has increased or decreased by the end of the source, how the writer uses structure to create an effect, the writer's use of any other structural features such as changes in mood, tone, or perspective. 8 marks. Question 4. For this question, focus on the second part of the source from line 35 to the end. In this part of the source, Grenouille is exceptionally affected by the scents he smells. To what extent do you agree or disagree with this statement? In your response, you could consider your impressions of his thoughts, feelings, and behaviour. Comment on the methods the writer uses to present his thoughts, feelings, and behaviour. Support your response with references to the text. 20 marks. Question 5. Writing. Your college or school is running a creative writing competition. Choose one of the options below for your entry. Either write a description of your dream place from your imagination. You may choose to use the picture below for inspiration. Or write the opening of a story about someone who has one overpowering aim or ambition. 24 marks for content and organisation, 16 marks for technical accuracy, 40 marks.